right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. As you can see, it's a solo adventure this morning. Derek is still not feeling the greatest. I'm going to muscle through this one. We're in the gauntlet of sick season, I guess, man. It's been the worst season, I think, for everybody. And I'm kind of sick of talking about it. We need to get healthy. We need to kick these viruses to the curb. So good morning, everybody. Win Southwell, Al Torrey, Lauren McQuaig, Derek, good morning. And I hope everyone's having a great day. We've got some things to talk about today. King SJ, good morning. We've got some things to talk about today. Primarily, we're going to talk about Brad Holmes a little bit. That made no sense. Primarily, we're going to talk about Brad Holmes for a little bit. The thing that I want to talk about with him is kind of how he set the stage yesterday. But we'll get to him in just a few moments. First, I want to start off with Sheila Hamp. She did it again. She sent out this letter yesterday to all the fans. Yeah, kind of a letter, if you will. It's kind of a couple short paragraphs, but basically she said this. She said, "I'm so proud of this team, our coaches, our fans, and everyone throughout the state of Michigan that supported us this season and during our playoff run." I think it's a quick statement. It's a good statement, but I think it was well worth reading. There was a full letter that she wrote to season ticket members, and I'm going to read that one to you guys. It says, "Dear One Pride, what a season. As I told our staff last week, I'm so proud of our team, our coaches, our amazing fans, and everyone throughout the state of Michigan that supported us this season and during our playoff run. To see the Honolulu Blue Wave that swelled throughout the season and playoffs, specifically in San Francisco, was inspiring and humbling. I know our fans felt it on the field, and I can tell you directly that I felt it. Every Jared Goff and every Let's Go Lions chant that echoed throughout Ford Field and visiting stadiums was amazing. Since I was a young girl, I have loved this team and have carried immense pride in being a Lions fan. Today, that pride is overflowing. When I stepped into this role 3 years ago, I had a vision for sustained success. The success of this season is what that vision looked like. Now we must go about making late January football a constant in Detroit. With the help of Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, who we hand-selected for this mission, the future for the Detroit Lions has never looked brighter. I said in January of 21 that we had found the right people to lead this organization, and I believe it even more today. The harsh reality of success is that you don't necessarily see the end coming, and it hits you hard when it arrives. We are living that now, but please don't let that dampen the excitement we felt and the success we earned, underlined. Only one team gets to celebrate at the end of the year, and our goal is to put ourselves in a position for that to be our celebration." She's talking about hosting the Lombardi Trophy. As Dan told our players, what we did this year wasn't easy. Next year won't be any easier, but I know our investment to this point and our plan going forward will help us live up to our standard. That standard is only achievable with all of us working together. Please accept a personal thank you from myself and my family for supporting us throughout this season. Thank you for wearing your Lions colors proudly at work, at school, at Ford Field, and in 10 other NFL stadiums. Without you at our games, at our watch parties, or watching in your living room, nothing we do matters. This league has always been about players and fans, and I'm so proud of the players and fans that represent the Lions. Training camp starts in about 175 days. I can't wait. Go Lions. Humbly, Sheila Hamp. Look, I think it's phenomenal that she does these things. I honestly can't remember any of the previous ownership really doing this. It's a great sentiment to pass along to the fans, how much she appreciates us. But I got to tell you, man, it feels different finally. And when she came, to the mic last year and told us just to, chill out, the relax mode, right? And just kind of let things play out. I don't think a lot of you were listening to it, believing in it. You were probably fed up. You're probably itching to go back to SOL, right? And I'm glad that you're here today, because without the fan base, she's right. This team doesn't do what it does. If we don't travel the way that we do, they don't have the presence of mind within the stadium that they have support. So we have to continue to support this team. And yesterday I challenged everybody that, look, Ford Field is going to be full of fans forever until we start going in a massive, or if we did go under, a massive change and started accumulating a ton of losses and we revert, which I don't see that happening, that stadium's going to be full of Lions fans. It's going to be hard to get tickets, if you're not a season ticket holder. They are trying to fill those seats with season ticket holders. There's going to be very few available to the public. So my challenge was travel. Join me this season. Travel. Let's set it up. The superfans already do an excellent job with meet and greets and traveling to all the games. Just join it, man. Join this bandwagon of traveling, because that's where we need to have a big presence. And quite honestly, it might cost you less to travel than it will to go to Ford Field, even if you live in the state of Michigan, just because of how expensive tickets are going to be on the secondary markets. So join us in traveling, and good morning to the rest of the people that just joined us. Josh Jackson says, good morning, man. Great podium presence from Brad yesterday. Don't bleep and question me is what I took from it. Yeah, that's what I put on the thumbnail today. Don't question me, Carlos. All I could think was, two things. You got, it's just one thing really, was Carlos from the Hangover movies. I was going to put it in the thumbnail, but I didn't. I didn't want to have any issues, but yeah, that's all I could think for some reason, is that jumped in my mind, and I could just think, and I put Carlos's face on a thumbnail, and then I took it down. But we'll talk about Carlos Menares and what happened yesterday with Brad Holmes. King SJ says, great press appearance. And Willie and Martha never wrote that kind of letter that I know of. Definitely have to give Sheila credit. Will Scott says, good morning, Pride Nation. Good morning, Will Scott. Hope everyone's doing well in your home. Cake Man 1218 says, good morning. And Lauren McQuaig must be tired still. All right. So next topic here. Speaking of traveling, there will be no travel to Brazil. I'm kind of bummed. I've never been to Brazil, but the Lions are not going to be playing in Brazil this year. So the first game in Brazil is going to represent the Eagles as the home team. And of course, the Lions do not play the Eagles this season. So we will not end up in Brazil. So you can check that off the box, that you don't need to spend $6,000 to go to Brazil this year. The next topic I want to touch on is the Ben Johnson rumors. This one kind of irks me the wrong way. Toledo Boy 419 says, good morning, Will. Good morning, man. How you doing? I don't know how you can report things on people without getting facts. You can have an opinion, right? State it's an opinion. But if you're going to report something as a fact, you would think that within all of your speculation, wouldn't you have reached out to Ben Johnson or his agent at some point to ask the questions? I mean, is that too much to ask? Because right now what's happening, and what's happened a couple of months ago, is Ben Johnson gets thrown under the bus. Now, I'm not saying everything that was done was perfect on Ben Johnson's side, but I don't think it was as bad as what people are trying to make it out to be. So when the first report came out a couple of months ago that he wanted $15 million a year to coach a team, there was zero fact behind that. Nobody reached out to the agent or Ben Johnson and got a statement before they published it. And that's just good journalism. I mean, you typically want to make sure that the people that you're writing about or you're about to throw under the bus, one, at least know you're coming, and two, get their side of the story. It makes your story more credible. And if they did say, yeah, I do want 15 million, well, then you've got a great piece. And then you can put all your opinions with it. But now, again, we have more rumors surrounding Ben Johnson. And I'm going to open up this article because they did a good job at pointing a few things out here. And this is by Gray Popke at Larry Brown Sports. So interesting theory given to explain all of the Ben Johnson leaks is the title of his the Wops. Derek's still under the weather a little bit. He's hoping to be back next week. Interesting theory given to explain all of the Ben Johnson leaks is the headline. This is what it goes on to say. It says the Washington Commanders' non-hire of Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson has turned oddly acrimonious. And there are some theories regarding why sides appear to have engaged in a series of leaks, aiming to discredit the other. This is the nasty part of business that I dislike, especially in the NFL. Before I go much further, if you don't think during the combine and leading up to the draft that it is not, it is literally warfare between these guys. You've got their agents, their publicists, the people that they're in bed with journalists reporting things, putting comments out or finding dirt on some of these soon to be draft picks to push them down the roster, right? You want to get your guy picked before the other guy, and they're going to do it at any means necessary. And I think it's just nasty. I really do. I think it's great that we find out some things about people so that you get a good background, but these NFL teams already have that information and more. They have everything they need. They know what you ate as a 5-year-old at the breakfast table. That's how much information they have. But it says both Johnson and the Commanders' hiring process has been scrutinized since the Lions offensive coordinator withdrew from consideration from the job while top Washington brass were en route to Detroit to interview him. One repeated narrative has suggested that Johnson's contract demands were excessive, though that has been disputed. Hey, good job, Papke. You at least stated what the issue was that was reported a couple of months ago, and then you said it was disputed because Ben Johnson's agent came out and said, that's not true. We've never demanded that kind of money. Paraphrasing there. Goes on to say those claims have been discussed within the NFL, and executives and agents have some theories for where they came from. According to Mike Sando of The Athletic, some believe the claims came from an executive that did not want their team to hire Johnson. If I had the oohs and the ahs right now, that's what I'd be playing, because this just sounds like a high school drama fest. So some believe the claims came from an executive that did not want their team to hire Johnson and thus sought to harm his candidacy. Exactly the same crap that goes on during free agency and during the draft. And it's happened to Jared Goff. Look at all the crap that was printed about him, coming out of LA. Another theory is that the focus on Johnson's supposed financial demands would help cover for the fact that the offensive coordinator interviewed poorly, as has been suggested by some. Again, great journalism. He's not saying it's a fact. He's saying it's been suggested. Other reports have claimed that Johnson did not impress during his interview, while Johnson supposedly came away with a negative impression of the ownership. Claims about Johnson's salary demands started to surface late in the regular season, though they were strongly denied by his agent. So here's where I'm going to say, or this is what I'm going to say. Whether Johnson wants $15 million or not, irrelevant. If a team is willing to pay him, then they believe that he is worth it. Let them pay the man. It does not matter what he makes. And quite honestly, the salary comparison between athletes and coaches, way too far apart. These coaches should be making a heck of a lot more money than they are. They're putting in the same amount of work as these guys, maybe not physically, but mentally. The hours around the office, it's unbelievable how much time they put in and how much time they spend away from their families for literally 7 to 9 months out of the season or more. And there's no price you can put on that time lost. So if he wants $15 million, pay the man. But that's not the case. The case that I believe what's going on here is Johnson has roots in Detroit. He feels strongly about the team, the city, the fans, and their ability as a team to get back to where they were this season. I think that's the real reason Now, what I understand came of this is while Washington was in the air, Johnson called or messaged them or whatever and said, I'm not coming. I'm staying home. I'm not taking the job, even if it's offered. Whatever he said. That kind of bad. I mean, you don't typically want to derail somebody. I mean, they're in the air. They spent all the money and the time to fly. Not that the money matters to them, but if I had to spend that kind of money and then lose it midair, yeah, I wouldn't be happy about it either. That's like not showing up for your prom date, right? She gets all ready, she's looking beautiful, and then you stiff her and don't show up. That's kind of what Johnson did. Whether I agree or disagree with what happened after that and how they started putting out this, these reports and these opinions and everything, I just got to say one thing. Johnson wants to stay in Detroit. Let him stay in Detroit. Next time, handle it a little better. I think that's all you can do. And we'll move on from that. Old Jarheads, good morning, says a couple years of being an OC, his resume isn't good enough to be a head coach yet. I think even Ben knows this. I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, I've seen more unqualified people get head coaching positions, but you're right about one thing. If they're not qualified enough, they kind of wash out quickly. I mean, you can look at just about everybody that came from the Bill Belichick tree. Pretty much all of them didn't work out. So, yeah, he's been in the league a while, though. That's the thing. He's been with the Lions, since 18? I think 18, 17. It's like 5 or 7 years, something like that. So he's been in the league a while. I think he definitely has enough experience. I would honestly think that he would be kind of the next McVay. That type of trajectory, I think that Ben Johnson will have when he becomes a head coach at some point. I don't think all of these teams would be interviewing him, year after year if he didn't have something that they wanted. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Lone Wolf says, sounds like to me Washington is just upset that they couldn't get Ben Johnson. Yeah, hey, they got Dan Quinn. I mean, he's going to be a pretty darn good coach. He's well respected. Now, when you talk about resume, he's got a better resume than Ben Johnson from time in the league. But what is he going to bring to the table in Washington? He's going to bring more of a defensive-minded coach. Ben Johnson's more of an offensive-minded coach. So I think it speaks to what Washington was looking for, which they didn't know. It seems like you're going to interview both sides, whoever's the best candidate you're going to take. But really, what's the vision for the team? Do you want a defensive-minded team or an offensive-minded team? Because that usually starts with your coach, unless they are, good enough to be able to play on both sides of the ball with developing both sides of the team. Old Jarhead says he's 37. He could be out. He could be, but being a head coach is a much bigger deal. Even DC is having his issues. Exactly. They learn, but you're exactly right. They're going to go through, a period of time where they're going to have to learn. They're going to go through their bumps and bruises, just like every coach does. And you know what? His first head coaching position may not be what defines him. He may not do well. He may get let go in 2, 3, 4 years, but it could be his second position where he flourishes. I think we got lucky with Dan Campbell. I really do. I think that he was the right man, the right time. Definitely comes with the right amount of experience. Josh Jackson says the man has a right to change his mind. He does. He absolutely does. All right, next topic. Brian Branch. He had some hot words on CJ Gardner-Johnson. And I want to bring that in because CJ Gardner has been a topic of discussion this week. And let me bring it up here. So this was put out by Jeremy Reisman at Detroit Online with Pride of Detroit. It says Brian Branch really wants Detroit Lions to re-sign veteran DB. Thought this was a great piece because of Brian Branch. I mean, the guy had an excellent rookie season. And he's clamoring to bring CJ Gardner back. His exact phrase was, yes, bring this MF back. is what he tweeted. And Woodward Sports put out a picture that said offseason moves should Detroit Lions re-sign CJ Gardner-Johnson. And that's what he responded to. The article says the Detroit Lions have an interesting decision ahead when it comes to veteran defensive back CJ Gardner-Johnson. The animated defender has proven to be a valuable asset in the NFL, leading the NFL with 6 interceptions in 2022. But his 2023 season with the Lions was a letdown, derailed by injury. I agree with all that. Still, the Lions rookie cornerback Brian Branch wants Gardner-Johnson back. On Monday, Branch went to Twitter to respond to a social media post asking Lions fans if the team should re-sign Gardner-Johnson, who signed a 1-year, $6.5 million contract with the team last year. Here's my final take on Brian Branch, on CJ Gardner. I would not bring him back for $6.5 million. It's going to have to be a very cap-friendly deal. I don't care what boat we're in, whether he's a loudmouth, causes too much ruckus with his mouth, or his vocal leadership works, because that's what I call it, is vocal leadership. I think that vocal leadership can do a lot for your team, and it can also get you in trouble at times. I think it's needed. I think if you have too many of them, it can cause a problem. Dan Campbell spoke last season when he said, you can have one guy in the roster that's, kind of iffy. You can't have two. I don't know if CJ Gardner was that guy or not. I thought he was more speaking to Jameson Williams and all the issues that Jameson Williams is going through. Matter of fact, I don't even know if CJ Gardner was on the roster yet. He might not have been. He might have been. So I don't think that CJ is a bad guy. I really don't. I just think that he's amped up. He loves the game of football. He's cocky, confident, right? Or confidently cocky, whatever way you want to put it. But I do believe that he helps this team continue to mature. And he does bring a lot of intangibles to the team that the Lions love. I think that his injury, like this article says, really derailed his season. And we did not get to see the best of CJ Gardner in 2023. Will we see the best of him in 2024? Brad Holmes is going to have to make that decision. What is your guys' take on CJ? If I could put up a poll right now, let me do that real quick. Let me put up a poll. CJ Gardner-Johnson back, yes or no? All right, let's see what you guys got to say. Okay, King SJ says if CJGJ does come back, I'm thinking most likely another 1-year deal. I 1,000% agree with you. Old Jarhead says CJGJ didn't do enough to get paid anymore. Fred Roeder, good morning, Fred. Haven't seen that name before, so welcome into Rockdown Syndicate, Rise and Grind Morning Show. Says we have plenty of cap space for defensive picks, but our drafting the last 2 years has been exceptional. Great point. Braylon Dennis, good morning, says bring CJ back for 1 more year. Denzel Vance says bring him back. Fred Roeder says yes, he has the right mindset for this team, but not a long-term deal. Fred Roeder also said, I think Sutton needs to go. His attitude towards fans is bad, and he did not play as advertised. CJ spent most of his year injured, but if he wants to be back, sign him for 2 more. Okay. So Cam Sutton, I didn't notice anything with him and fans, so I really can't comment on that, but I will say his play was terrible this year. But I think that it's a mixed reality, right? If you don't have, I know we call it a pass rush, but look, we got a ton of pressure. But pressure wasn't equally negative plays. You guys have heard me talk about this 1,000 times this season. So unless we're going to fix that, the DBs are going to struggle. I don't care who's back there. You could have, Deion Sanders back there, and he's still going to struggle. You could have Patrick Surtain back there. He's still going to struggle. I don't care how good you are. You cannot stay sticky for more than 3 seconds in this league. It is almost impossible. These players are too good, too fast, too shifty. So again, I don't care who it is. They're going to have difficulty unless the front of the defense is able to affect the play. And quite honestly, when does it really need to happen? You really need one good negative play on every series. And if you can get that done, like if you can hold them, a couple yards on first, a few yards on second, or whatever, a few yards on third, and you slam them on second, or you slam them on first and you set them back, that's really all you need. If your defensive coordinator, is willing to kind of change up the attacking, aggressive defensive style that they run, which you guys heard me talk about the 49ers game, is that we got too aggressive. We were an attacking defense in that game. And because of that, it burned us in the second half. That's where your defensive coordinator has to recognize the outcome of the game is more important than my defensive strategy right now. I need to make sure that these guys don't give up the big plays. I need to put them into a position to succeed, not fail. And that'll be another topic maybe on Thursday. I'm going to be doing some positional grades and kind of just talking about the season. We'll go down the list of everybody. We'll talk about the coaches. We'll talk about the positional groups. I might look at what everybody else kind of gave for grades. I might not. I might do mine first and then look. But I think it's a good topic. It'll definitely take up a whole hour. Bobby Tarantino, good morning. Tarantino, good morning, says, for another 1-year deal on CJ Gardner. Lone Wolf says, do you think Brad Holmes re-signs Mosley? Man, did you hear me talk about that yesterday? I was a little concerned by the way that Brad Holmes' body language kind of perked up about Mosley. It's almost like he was kind of making an excuse that Mosley only had one major injury before this second one. And it almost seemed like he's going to do it again. So I'll put it out there that there might be a potential that Mosley is back on this team. Now, do I think that he's coming back as the starter, like somebody you're going to rest your hat on? I hope not. If he wants to bring him back and have somebody available later on in the season, because he's not going to be available to about week 6. You might as well not bring him back until, week 8. If he's not going to be able to start the season, bring him back slowly. But if you want to put somebody like that on injured reserve, limp them along, get them ready. They'll have plenty of game reps available later on in the season. But I don't think you take a chance in not bringing somebody else in to have as your bona fide number 1 or number 2, because there's going to be some decisions made on Jerry Jacobs, whether Kendall, Vildor comes back. But I think that there's a possibility. Oh, Bobby Tarantino says, you mean Mr. I don't make adjustments, talking about Aaron Glenn? Yeah, he didn't make the right adjustments in the 49ers game. Or maybe he thought that he was. But look, I really can't speak to what Aaron Glenn does or doesn't do. I'm not there. I don't really know. I can only see it from afar and give you my opinion. That's all it is, just my opinion. Ryan Van Valkenburg says, good morning, Will. Good morning, Ryan. All right, next topic. So far, man, we're rolling through this. We got Sheila Hamp covered, Brazil, Ben Johnson, Brian Branch. Let's talk about Jared Goff for a minute. And I captured the quote from Brad Holmes, and this is something that we've known, their love for Jared Goff. This team, Sheila Hamp, Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, they love the guy. Now, yesterday I put out a video. If you guys have not seen it yet, you should go watch the video. I put it out, and for some reason, the non-edited version decided to upload and not the edited version. So I probably look like a moron for a little bit while I'm trying to, check my mic and find everything that I need. But anyway, I re-uploaded it late last night, about 11:30. And matter of fact, it's talking about Jared Goff and Matt Stafford and how there's the potential for another trade between those two. I know it's a shocker if you haven't seen it yet. It shocked me too that somebody even considered this. But this was an article that came out about 9 days ago now that I ran across last night, and in my heart sunk, man. I'm like, oh God, no. Let's not even think about this. But then at the same time, I wouldn't put it past Brad Holmes. What's the best way to save $50 million a year and elevate your team? Well, I don't know. Maybe trade the hottest quarterback in the league right now, or one of, for 2 more first-round picks. And that's probably what he's worth. I mean, let's think about it. So I'm not going to blow the whole video. You guys go watch it, but here's what I'll leave you with. And then we'll talk about Jared Goff. The Rams trade Jared Goff and 3 picks, 2 firsts and a third for Matt Stafford. Take on a big contract. Lions get a average contract. And then maybe 2-3 years, or maybe 3 years later, they do it again. They pay out the nose for Jared Goff. I don't see it happening, but go watch the video and you'll get some more insight. But I wouldn't put it past Brad Holmes to do something like that, because at the end of the day, it's about the team. It's not about any one player. And I think that we fully understand that that's what Dan and Brad are all about. All right. So this article came out that had the quote in it, but I want to read a few things in here. This is by Clutch Points. It says Detroit Lions quarterback Jared Goff has been doubted a lot in his career and given up on his old team. Actually, just give me 1 second. I got to blow my nose real quick. All right. So Detroit Lions quarterback Jared Goff has been doubted a lot in his career and given up on his old team, the Los Angeles Rams. I don't agree with that. I don't think he was given up on, or I don't think he gave up anything. But now he was loved in Detroit, and general manager Brad Holmes admitted that he has always believed in him. So here's the quote by Brad Holmes yesterday. He says, "I've always had belief in Jared Goff. You guys have always heard me say that. I don't know what more needs to be said from a leadership or performance standpoint, or what more he needs to do in that regard. But in terms of the belief, as always, I think I said this to you guys." Man, this quote's kind of wrong here. 1 second. It says, "But in terms of the belief, as always, I think I said this to you guys before. He got drafted in 2016, and he wasn't a full-time starter. But in 2017 was his first year as a full-time starter, and he made the playoffs. And he got exited versus the Falcons that year, but the second year as a full-time starter, he went to the Super Bowl. And what I didn't understand why his career was defined after he went to the Super Bowl in his second year as a full-time starter. And why this is important, why, he said this, and why this is important, because this is something that I spoke about before in another video that I did in the spring, is what the Rams said after Jared Goff left, what their fans said after Jared Goff left. It was nothing but bad, it seemed like. The media all over the country trashed Jared Goff and said that he wasn't a good quarterback. The guy went to the playoffs in his second season as a full-time starter. He started with the Rams the last 7 games of the season. They lost every game, but they only won like 2 games, I think, leading up to that point. Fisher was a dumpster fire in LA. That team was a dumpster fire. So they threw Goff in to get some reps, but there wasn't anything he was going to be able to do with that team. He really didn't have any weapons available. There was a lot of injuries. So his second season, full-time starter, takes his team to the playoffs. Third season, second season as a full-time starter, he takes his team to the Super Bowl. And now, in his third season with the Lions, he just won 2 playoff games and went to the NFC Championship game. Now you compare his playoff stats and his record, his regular season record, he is now in the top 3 in the league, might even be top 2 now. I'm going to have to go back and look, for all quarterbacks since 2016 for regular season record and the win rate and playoff record. He just doesn't have a Super Bowl ring yet. But yet there's a lot of people out there that want to trash this guy. I don't get it. I really don't. King SJ says Brad wasn't necessarily wrong in the sense that there was some bad luck on Mosley. Oh, rewind. I'm sorry, I missed that one. But if Brad brings him back, I just don't want it to be in all your eggs in one basket approach. Yeah, exactly. Let me move this chat along here a little bit. Roger Rathburn says, I love that Brad called out the individual reporters, make them accountable for what they write. Yeah, I've got some information on that too, and I did a video on that yesterday. I thought it was hilarious. Ryan Van Valkenburg says, no way I could see it in the future, but Hendon is not ready yet. No, he hasn't even taken a snap yet. He's, we don't even know what he is. The ones said Brad Holmes is a menace and a villain if he trades Goff back. I mean, wouldn't that be nuts? That would be completely nuts. It would be the 2 most epic trades ever in the history of NFL. And imagine if Goff went back to LA and won a Super Bowl with LA. That would just break all of our hearts, right? Fred Roeder says, wow, Goff performed better than the previous 2 seasons, but he's still a little worrisome under pressure. But love the guy still. I think all quarterbacks look chaotic under pressure. But anyway, like I was saying, I just don't know why the media trashed Goff. I don't know why McVay and the Rams trashed Goff. But Brad Holmes knew what he had. He knew who Jared Goff was. I mean, he scouted the guy. So he knew everything about him. And in his opinion, he probably thought that he was stealing Goff, which he definitely did in that trade. He completely fleeced the Rams. But he went on to say this, Brad Holmes, he said, and so when he came to us, I always had belief. So him doing what he did this past year or even the year before, it's not a surprise to us. I just know how he's wired. I know the talent he has. I know the leadership he has. And I know his mental and physical toughness. I know I know what he's made of. And I think his peers and definitely his teammates recognize the same things. So just happy about what he's done and just couldn't be more proud of everything that he's achieved. The only thing that matters is that his teammates and his team believe in him. That's the only thing that matters. All the rest of it, outside noise. You tune it out. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what any of these journalists say. None of it matters. If your teammates believe in you, you see what happens. They believe in Jared Goff, and he darn near took him to a Super Bowl this season, where everybody wrote Jared Goff off by what, week 5 this year? I know I didn't, but a lot of people did. You threw a few interceptions, big deal. You threw a few in one game, okay. It happens. If our defense could have stopped anybody, well, maybe we win a couple more games this season. But he still had an excellent season. The interception stopped at some point or really slowed down. I mean, he had, I don't even know, what do you have, 11 interceptions on the season? And I think 9 of them or 10 of them came before week 10. So it kind of tells you who he is as a player. Where's Lauren McQuaig with my stats? Lauren always does a great job. Will Scott says Goff have done enough to get his payday. He has. I was one of those Goff critics, but he's proven himself to me. One of the top tier quarterbacks in the NFL. Sports Talk with Rob. Good morning. He says next year Goff will be an MVP candidate. He should have been this year. You know, if he would have jumped into the Super Bowl this year, and I don't know when they vote on MVP. I think the regular season MVP is done before the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is, but he should have been in the conversation this year. He really should have been. He had a hell of a season, but stats don't lie. That's why I love them. They tell a story, right? You have to understand the stats, navigate through them to understand the rest of the story. But go look at his stats. Compare what he did this year, last year to 2018. And you know, if you really want to get crazy, compare it to Matt Stafford. Because when Jared Goff came to Detroit, that's the comparison that everybody did. And when I looked at the stats, I saw almost mirror images. The percentages were almost the same. So I knew that we were getting a quarterback that could at least do what Matt Stafford was doing. The difference was, will he have better touch on the ball to complete some of those passes that Matt Stafford couldn't? Will he have better command of the offense or be able to read a defense better than Matt Stafford? And I don't know if that's the case. Matt Stafford has about 3 different throws that Jared Goff doesn't have. Mostly the sidearm, style of throws. That's just not the way Jared Goff throws the ball. He doesn't like to anyway. So Jared Goff, where does he belong? How much is he going to get paid? I heard and read yesterday in a few articles and listened to a few podcasts on the national media level that $50 million is the bottom. That's the floor. I've always kind of leaned to that 47, 45, couple of, void years, about 80% guaranteed out of the total contract if it's going to be a short window. So a 2-year extension, 130 million total, 80% guaranteed. That's a great contract. I don't think he's going to get a 2-year extension. I think it's going to be minimum of 3. Could be 4. I bet you his agent's pushing for 4, if not 5. And that's going to be a very tough conversation. At the end of the day, Goff is under contract for this season. If they cannot work out a deal that is equitable to both sides, Goff may be playing on the last year of his contract. And if that happens and he has another excellent season and the Lions don't want to pay him next year, he's gone. And that's where you're going to see the Hendon Hooker rise up, and the Lions will probably take another quarterback in this draft. I wouldn't be surprised, especially if the deal's not done before the draft. I would expect that the Lions will probably take a quarterback. That's just my early predictions. All right, so the next topic, and this is going to be one you guys don't like. Frank Ragnow, possible retirement. During the season, I said it a few times that, look, there's only so much one man can go through. There's only so much pain, whether it's physical or emotional pain, that you can go through. And he's been carrying the torch all season. He's been battling through injury. And there comes a time and a point where you've got to say enough is enough. I'll say initially, I don't believe Frank Ragnow wants to retire, and I don't think that he will retire this year. That's my initial impression, because if I understand even a little bit of who Frank Ragnow is, I think that he's a man of his word. And I think that he feels he owes something to the city of Detroit, like he said in a press conference about 2 weeks ago. And for that reason, I think that he's going to come back for one more year. And he's not going to leave the Lions high and dry. I think the Lions will go out and sign or draft a center that can play guard as well. It's a much needed position. But I think in free agency, there's a possibility that we might see someone coming into their, second or third contract. Probably not the most expensive guy in the market. That's just not the Brad Holmes way, but somebody that's fundamentally sound, technically sound, that can step in and play the game. We need a leader. It's going to be very, very, very hard to replace Ragnow. And he's probably the best center in the game mentally, physically, top 3. He's going to be very difficult to replace. Rick Grit says stats don't lie. They tell half truths. Stats only tell part of the story. Omitting part of the story is the same as lying in the end. Stats do lie. I like it. All right. So let me, before I go any more on Frank Ragnow, I'm going to take you up on that quote real quick. And you're going to hate what I'm going to say, but it's okay. So if you were to go look at somebody's sacks for the season, and you see that they have, let's say, 11 and a half sacks, what story does that tell you? Tells you a pretty good story, right? Pretty good player. Borderline great player. No name attached. What if that same person had over 100 pressures, led the league in pressures? I mean, you'd be jumping out the gym to get this guy on your team, right? Now, you looked at the stats, but then you go watch the game tape. And you see somebody struggles with one-on-ones at times. Definitely struggles against double teams. And a couple of his sacks were just tap downs. Now, what are you thinking? Stats do lie. Great stats, part of the story. The rest of the story lies in the game tape. So your quote's exactly right, Rick Grit, and that's why I love stats, but I try to get deeper into the story. And no, I'm not just picking on Hutch. It's just I can use him as an example only because I know what's happened to some of his stats throughout the season. But the bigger story is the game tape, and that's what will always lead you. Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes talk about it all the time. Surface level, you can look at the stats. You have to watch the tape. And you have to know what you're looking for. Good morning, Southwest Line 26. He says it's easier to get worse than better at the quarterback position. Goff is going nowhere. I said the same thing yesterday, and that's the same thing that Dan Campbell has said early off in the spring, is that it's really, really tough to get better. It's easier to get worse at quarterback. Bobby Tarantino says if Frank retires, it's a well-deserved retirement. King SJ says my gut feeling is Frank comes back for 24. Beyond that, I'm not sure. Chris Mick says it's all about what you put on tape. Exactly. Demigod 313 says I love how people are so quick to say Hendon Hooker is not ready, but we see in other rookies become Pro Bowl, all pro in their rookie season. All right, so I'm going to challenge you on this one because I know this for a fact. Hold on here. All right. Go back and look at a piece that I did, and I'll repost it today. I looked at all of the rookie quarterbacks. Okay. They came out of the league since 2017. And the reason why I did not want the Lions to draft a rookie and think that they were going to start right away, and the reason why I was trying to calm the fan base and say, look, you don't want a rookie to come in and start, is exactly what you saw this season and every season before that. You had one outlier this season, and that was CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is the only guy that I put in my top 5 out of Hendon Hooker, but Hendon Hooker was injured, so for that reason, he had to slide down in the draft. But if he wasn't injured, he would have been a top 5 pick in this draft. I believe in Hendon Hooker in that way, but I have not seen anything from him yet on the field as a pro. Bryce Young, I said was going to be a disaster, and he was. But if you go look back at all of the rookies in the last, 6, 7 seasons now, it takes a minimum for almost all of them of 2.5 seasons to make it to the playoffs. So to your point that you're seeing rookie all-pro, Pro Bowl, no one cares about the Pro Bowl, but rookie all-pro in CJ Stroud, well, that's one guy. And he's only one since 2017. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson is the only other one that went to the playoffs, I believe, in his rookie season. That's it. Didn't win. All the other quarterbacks, all the other rookie quarterbacks took a minimum of 2.5 seasons. And I'll have to go back and find the numbers, but I want to say out of like 20, 25 quarterbacks or whatever it was that were drafted, we're talking first round only. I want to say that there was maybe 5 that even had made it to the playoffs, period, in 2.5 seasons. But you have to go look at the number. You have to go watch that tape. I'll put it up again because there's a lot of information in it. There's a ton of stats that I comb through, and it's based on their records. It's based on their performance. Rookies are not the answer at the quarterback position. They are few and way far between. I mean, look, you've got 1, maybe 2 in the last 7 seasons that did anything for their team as a rookie. those are not the odds that I would want to gamble with at all. I would much rather have a proven guy. And Hendon Hooker, he's coming off an ACL. So look what happened with Jameson Williams. How long did it take for him to really get going? You never know how long it's going to take for you to come back and feel comfortable on that leg. Hendon Hooker hasn't played a snap in a game in almost 2 seasons, 2 years. Well, 2 seasons. He didn't this last year. It would have been, the year before that, but he got injured early in the season. So yeah, 2 years about. That's a long time to not really play, high quality football. It's going to take him some time to get it back. Now, all of his intangibles will probably still be there, right? He still has, the same athletic ability, but how long is it going to take for him to feel comfortable on that leg? I dare say that Jameson Williams didn't feel comfortable on his leg and thinking that he wasn't going to get hurt and probably playing a little bit scared until after the Broncos game. It's just one of those gut checks you got to go through. You've got to take a few hits. You've got to go through near injury, and then you realize you're okay. And then you can start to play. It's all mental, man. It's 90% mental. All right, so Demigod says, but what I'm saying, rookie quarterback RG3, Andrew, yeah, but that's way before 2017. Way before. They got an experience. What happens if the Lions cash in on Goff and we're stuck with Goff if he doesn't play to his potential? I mean, what about Goff has told us that he's not going to play to his potential? Go look at his stats. He's only had like 2 bad seasons. And that was his rookie season where he was thrown into a mix with no weapons, a losing team that nobody wanted to play for with Fisher and the Rams, 2016. And then his rookie season with the Lions in 2021, no weapons. The team darn near was going to go 0-16 again. Those are the 2 worst seasons he's had. Every other season that Jared Goff has had has been incredible. And he's got amazing numbers. So that's where I would challenge you to look at, look at the stats and really look at the player and what they've done. I mean, look at what Goff just repeated what he did last season. That is extremely hard to do. This is not, matter of fact, let me pull up his numbers since we're going to talk about it. I like how Demigod always gets me going, man. Always. Love it. All right, here we go. 2023 regular season. Completion percentage in 2023, 67.3. 2022, 65.1. 2021, 67.2. 2020, 67 flat. 2019, 62.9. 2016, 54.6. So his worst season was his rookie season. I mean, arguably, we understand that. There's nothing that he can do about, joining a crap team in 2016. And then in 2021, he actually had a really good completion rate or completion percentage. He just didn't have any weapons. He had a rough season. He didn't have a team around him. But overall, his lifetime, his career completion percentage is 64.7. And if I were to take a guess at to where that ranks in the NFL right now, I would say it's definitely in the top 10, could be top 5 for completion percentage. And 67.3, let's see here. You've got to weed out some of these players because like Jake Browning, I mean, come on, didn't play enough. Kirk Cousins didn't play enough. But season totals, Jared Goff is definitely in the top 5. Yeah, Tua Tagovailoa, Brock Purdy, Derek Carr, Dak Prescott ahead of him. And, I mean, Kirk Cousins and Jake Browning are 1 and 2, but they didn't play enough games. Dak Prescott was a 69.4. Jared Goff was a 67.6. So he's top 5 in completion percentage. Wish I could pull up the postseason play. But the point that I'm trying to make here is he's a league leader. Everything that he's done has shown us that he's going to continue to do the same thing year in and year out. For his yards, he threw 4,575 yards regular season this year, 4,438 last season. So he got better, but you're talking about 150 yards difference, between the season. He had 605 attempts this year to 587 last year. So literally, about one game difference or half a game difference. Completed 407 this year to 382 last year. But if you look at every year before this, his worst season, 2021, he threw for 3,245 yards, but he also missed 3 games. 2020 threw for just under 4,000. 2019, 2018 threw for more than 4,600 yards. 2017, which was his true first rookie season, was only in 15 games, threw for 3,800 yards. So very, very consistent. Now his interceptions, the most interceptions that he's ever had in a single season is 16. And that was in 2019. He played in all 16 games, but he also threw the ball 626 times. That is a ton of balls, man. A ton of passes. He averages roughly 10 interceptions a season. That's pretty darn good, man. That's, again, top 10 in the league. His QBR, his passer rating on average career 93.6. So I'm not worried about what Jared Goff's going to do. I'm really not. He's got amazing numbers. He's been playing, immensely under control. And I hear you, man. I think what you're more concerned about the money. And if you want to talk about the money aspect to it, I think you got to look at the percentage more than the overall number, because the overall numbers scare people. But you got to look at the percentage, and that's how these teams look at it. They look at it from a cap and a cap percent. So right now, here, I'll just pull it up real quick. Man, you got me off today. That's okay. That's how much I believe in Jared Goff. I will defend this guy to the moon and back. I really will. And that's just because nobody else really has. I mean, there's only a few of us that have really defended Jared Goff. Derek has defended him because he sees, speaking for him, I would say that he sees, the quality that Jared Goff brings to the table. All right. So there is a section in here that I need to find. That would be the cap percentage. One second here. All right, here we go. Cap percentage. So in 2023, Jared Goff is 13.7% of the overall cap. Right now, as it sits, his contract in 2024 is 13.2%. Now the cap is going up about $25 million this year. And if you were to pay him $50 million, you give him a signing bonus, that's going to affect the first few years or all the years of his contract, but you're able to kick the can down a little bit, right? You put a couple of void years in, he might only get paid, he's set to make $32 million in 2024. He might make that or less in a new contract in 2024. He might make that or less in 2025. So his cap percentage should not change. It should not go up. Matter of fact, it should go down because the cap is raising. And given the amount that he's set to make, it's like a 1-for-1 trade-off. If you're adding $25 million to the cap and you're paying your quarterback $20 million more per season, well, you haven't affected the cap really. And then that's the overview look at it. That's not the granular look at it. But a cap percentage is what you really need to look at. Every single one of these positions is done, by cap percentage. They spend X amount on quarterbacks, X amount on defensive ends or defensive line, X amount on quarterbacks or DBs, X amount. I think you know where I'm going. X amount on wide receivers. So if you put a percentage to each one of those positional groups, and then you take a dollar amount and you dump it onto that percentage, then you look at who's available and you say, all right, I got 10% of the cap to spend on this group. I've got 50% of that number already allocated to guys on the roster that are signed. I have X amount of dollars available to go out and sign new guys, including rookies. Who can I get? That's the brief conversation that I'm sure that they have with their financial team. And that's how they go out and find players. And that's how they can afford, to bring guys in. And that's why the big number doesn't matter. All of these other teams that are paying huge numbers to quarterbacks, they wouldn't be able to do it if they couldn't make it work. So it works. The numbers all work. It's just how many guys can you pay a max contract to and have a successful team? And that's where Brad Holmes is really going to have to juggle this season, because he has the most money he's ever had with the Lions this season, about $70 million. And he's got a few guys that deserve some contracts. And there's going to be some hard questions being asked. There's going to be some hard conversations, because I don't think you do not pay Penei Sewell. You have to. St. Brown, that one worries me. I don't know how you can pay him $25 million. I love the dude. I love what he does for the team. But again, how can you pay him a max contract? You'd have to go through the draft. You'd have to bring in more rookies to supplement. And you definitely can't have him get hurt. If he gets hurt, there's your team in $25 million. Your offense doesn't really play that great when he's been out of the game. We've done pretty well, but he's a big component. He's a big piece of it. He takes a lot of attention. And I know I'm going off track here a little bit, but this started with contracts and Jared Goff. Yeah, old Jarhead says, Amon-Ra St. Brown is quite aware of what he is paid. Yeah, he deserves, he deserves a new contract. But the hard reality is this. When you sign a contract, that's your contract. So does he really deserve a new contract this year? If his contract, if it's expiring, yes. But if it's not expiring and, ownership will tell you, look, we'll take care of you next year. Yeah, it's probably going to burn him up inside. And then he might not play as well, or he could hold out. Any of those things could happen. Could happen with any player. But that's where they have to realize, is the Super Bowl going to pay me more, or this contract going to pay me more? Because I'll tell you right now, you go win a Super Bowl, and I've said this before, you can forget your contract, because you're going to make 10 times that contract in ad deals and sponsorships and everything else. Commercials. That's why you see these guys on commercials left and right. And if you don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to get a ton, he's going to get a ton. I haven't watched his podcast in a couple of weeks, old Jarhead, but I will. I'm gonna check him out. Demigod 313 says, that's what I'm saying. St. Brown is not a true number one, but he has played like one for the Lions, but the Lions need a true number one to take the pressure off of him. It's confusing. It is. We're not lying when we tell you that he's been the best, most consistent receiver since he entered the league. Even more so than Jamar Chase. That's a tough conversation to have, because he's a slot receiver. He's not a number one. He's not 6'3", 220, with a 4.35 speed. But he gets the job done. It's tough. What we're hoping is that Jameson Williams can explode and turn into that number one. Or the Lions find another number one wide receiver this year that they can develop. Someone that they can get in the draft that doesn't cost them a ton of money, but is explosive. That's what they really need. They need to find an explosive wide receiver in the draft this year. But we'll talk more about that later. Southwest Line 26 says Brad Holmes talked about the importance of looking at the present and the future when it comes to the roster and the cap. To keep the core together, they will all need to take less. Those again, the tough conversations, man. If you get them all in the room and you ask them, what's more important to you, your individual contract or the team winning a Super Bowl? I would hope that all of them would raise their hand and say the team winning a Super Bowl. Because then the next question you have to ask them is, okay, how much are you willing to take less so that we can build this team to win a Super Bowl and you will get paid on the back end? What I would do, and I'm sure that they do this a lot with contracts, give them a huge bonus if they win a Super Bowl. Yeah, it's really going to screw your financials if it happens, but wouldn't you rather have that problem than to break up the team? Put big bonuses in their contract if they win a Super Bowl, but allow those bonuses to be spread out, over a few seasons. And someone mentioned this a few months ago. I don't know if this is allowed or not, but why couldn't you put the player in ads for Ford or for any other company and have them get paid that way, which I'm sure is not, legal. I'm sure you can't devise a contract that says, the NFL salary cap is going to pay you X amount of dollars, but yes, we're also going to get you a bunch of, advertising revenue by doing some commercials through our, our company. I'm sure that there's a very fine line there that can't be crossed. But someone brought that up, and I thought it was funny to think about. But Chris Mick says, yeah, I'm definitely not trying to see Hooker playing because Goff is hurt. Goff has stayed incredibly healthy. The good thing is we do have Hendon Hooker if Goff does go down. I do believe in Hendon Hooker. He was my number 2 quarterback in this last draft. I said it. I mean, there's plenty of receipts on the channel that, 1, I called Hendon Hooker to the team, and 2, in the 3rd round. So I'm 100% all in on Hendon Hooker being a phenomenal backup for this team with the ability to someday lead a team, just not right now. Let him develop and let Goff continue slinging that ball. Old Jarhead says, until he ends up somewhere else that makes him a starter. He must be talking about Hooker. Cakeman 1218 says, I really hope we draft a good cornerback. And we will. Old Jarhead says, Amon-Ra St. Brown makes $900K. I don't know what's on paper. Governor takes half, but he says he's living in poverty, paraphrasing. Yeah, he's not impoverished, man. $400K, $450, if you're paying 50% taxes, whatever the highest tax bracket is now, I think it's close to 50%. Yeah, you're bringing home $450K, dude. Like, you're not impoverished. Your agent should be getting you, ad deals all day. Your podcast from 33rd Team should be paying you big bucks. So maybe you need a different agent. I'll be more than happy to represent you. We'll get you some money. And that's a joke, by the way. Peter Van Larhoven says we need to fix the guard center position. We do. All right. So the next topic, Frank Ragnow, we were talking about him retiring. That's where we kind of left off. We got sidelined. Great job, Demigod 313, for getting me sidelined this morning on Jared Goff. But let's continue talking about Frank. Frank the Tank. Look, he's one of the biggest and best leaders on this team. He has fought through a ton of injury. The little bit that we do know, about his injury history and what he's been dealing with is, large portion of it is that plantar plate that is not fixable. It's like the bottom of your foot. There's 2 plates that come together and there's no cartilage there. And that's got to be very painful, bone on bone. I know what bone on bone's all about. I have arthritis. So it's got to be very painful to play through. But he also had the toe issue. All things are not easy. And then this year, talking about almost every bone in his body's hurting. He's in a lot of pain. So I think for that reason, his career is going to be shortened. He hasn't had a short career yet. Anybody that lasts longer than 5 seasons in the NFL is a pretty long career. I think the average is about 3.5 seasons. But most notably, in this article was by Vito Churcho out of All Lions Fan Nation. It says, perhaps no Lions players embodied it more for a sustained period of time than Frank Ragnow. The Pro Bowl lineman has played through injury after injury since being drafted by the organization in the first round of the 2018 draft, number 20 overall. Most notably, he's battled a lingering turf toe injury since the 2021 campaign, an ailment that limited him to just 4 games in that season. Yet he's managed to suit up for nearly a full season's worth of games the past 2 seasons, 16 and 22 and 15 and 23, while racking up Pro Bowl honors in both campaigns and second team All-Pro selection this past year. And most recently, he played in all 72 of the offensive snaps in Detroit's NFC Championship game, lost to the 49ers a week after spraining his knee and ankle in the Lions divisional round playoff win over the Bucs. I mean, that's huge motivation to anybody out there that's suffering. I mean, this guy goes out and plays a very physical game, beat up. He's definitely, like this article says, the definition of a gamer. Reliable, gritty, tough. I mean, anything you want to throw at him. And it says that you'd be hard pressed to find a current NFL player tougher than him. And I believe that. This article goes on to say, unfortunately, though, he may have played his last down as a professional football player. I don't believe that. Since the end of the season, there has been a growing amount of speculation that Ragnow will call it quits. The narrative has only been fueled by recent comments made by both the veteran interior lineman and the general manager, Brad Holmes. Ragnow, for one, didn't specifically bring up that he's pondering retirement, but he did reference the physical and mental toll the game of football has taken on him. All right. And then there is this quote by Ragnow. It says, it takes a toll on you. It really takes a toll on you. So I need to find a way to get back to Frank, and I don't regret any of this at all. But it weighs on you. And I'm just going to take some time and really figure everything out to make sure that I'm feeling good. Not only for me, the football player, but for me, the best husband and best father, and everything with that as well. It's a good statement. Holmes had this to say about Ragnow. He says, I have so much respect for him and for everything that he goes through and fights through, that I'm just respectful of his time and his thoughts. We're not going to pressure him to do anything or make any moves, but the communication will be diligent. It'll be thorough. It'll be respectful. So something's going on here. To me, it seems like it's getting a little bit more grave as the days goes by. That something's going on with Frank, and it's clearly not all physical. He mentioned the mental side of it. When you're dealing with a lot of pain, I mean, I've been there. It definitely could weigh on you. And if he's going through a lot, physically and now mentally, and, I believe he has a new child this last season, new baby in the home. You've got that to deal with too. Not a whole lot of sleep. You're caring for another human being. So mentally it's a lot. Physically it's demanding. And those may be enough reasons for him to hang up the cleats. So as where before I was very, 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 I guess, on the positive side of this, thinking that he would be back this season, I think I'm more 50-50 right now. I think that he wants to play. I think that, we know that he loves the offensive line and the relationships that they have. Like Taylor Decker said, they're tethered, which I thought was an epic statement. So I think he's 50-50, man. I think I'm 50-50 on whether he comes back. And that's going to be a very tough loss, because between him and Jared Goff, man, they really lead that offense. You need a very intelligent center to do what what he does, and a very physical center to be able to keep your quarterback clean. It's going to be a very tough position to replace. I don't think people put enough credit on the center position. Demigod 313 says that if Glasgow stays healthy too, he gets hurt almost as much as Frank does. Frank finishes games more, in my opinion. I must have missed something. Cake Man 1218 says, would we resign Graham Glasgow as a center if Frank retired? He is a perfect fit. Okay, that's where that statement went into by Demigod 313. You know, the thing with Glasgow is he's looking for a payday too. So he made what, $4.5 million this year. He's probably wanting closer to $6 million. And he's probably wanting a couple of years, you know, as a deal. I would definitely bring back a Graham Glasgow before I would a Jonah Jackson. And you might overpay a little bit for Glasgow, but I think what he brings to the team, you know, bringing that continuity in the relationships that he has with everybody, and he played better than Jonah this year. At least by the PFF grades, he played better. And I think that he played, you know, commensurate to what Jonah did on the left side. But I think that, you know, Glasgow as a right guard and as a center fill-in or replacement, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you got to bring Glasgow back, especially with the up and down, you know, of Ragnow. And Glasgow played great at center when he was in this year. I think he let up one sack right off the get. But then after that, I think he dialed in pretty well, played pretty solid this season. It's definitely somebody I want to get on the show and have a conversation with. And Peter Van Larhoven says we need to spend a high draft pick on the O-line and then re-sign Glasgow and also a mid-round guard. I agree with all of that. I think that the Lions will address the trenches again. I know they're unsexy picks, but the more people start to understand how this team functions and how, you know, it's going to function for a long time and what's needed, that this offensive line has to stay as intact as possible so that Goff can do what he does. There's an argument out there that people will say, well, Goff is only Goff because he has a great offensive line. There is not one quarterback in this league that does not play better with a better offensive line. And if they don't, that quarterback's trash. If you're a dual threat, you can get away with a marginal offensive line because, you know, you've got the speed to get away and, you know, dial up some run plays. But every quarterback needs an offensive line that you know, plays well. So I think that Brad Holmes is going to find somebody in free agency to take the spot of, you know, either Jonah Jackson or Graham Glasgow, hopefully bring Graham back. But I do think that we'll probably spend, you know, if not a first round pick, a second round pick on the offensive line. And that's before I go through and start grading, you know, the draft and telling you guys what I think about the draft, because that will change. It's only February. We've got a couple of months before the draft, so there's going to be a lot of movement. And because of the way this season went, yes, I did a lot of work in December, but because of the way this season went, man, there's a lot of work left to do. So we'll get motoring on the draft here and free agency all week. Probably start with free agency first. Cake Man says, I love how Frank mentions Matt Stafford when he is asked about pushing through his injuries. Stafford was tough, man. He's as tough as they come. Chris Mix, Frank is in Jason Kelce territory. I love that story they did on Jason Kelce. I thought it was incredible. I believe it was on Amazon. Great story. Chris Mix says we just need one more season from him. And I think that's probably all Frank has left, honestly. Demigod 313 says, I say draft his replacement and let the rookie learn under him while he's there. Don't wait till he's ready to hang it up to develop a young guy. Dude, that's an excellent thought process because I believe the same thing. Brad Holmes probably doesn't, though. He probably thinks that he can find guys to plug in and play. I'm always about cornerbacks. Bring someone in before you need to replace somebody. Let them learn. And then you know, that way you're not throwing their feet to the fire. Same thing with quarterbacks. Don't draft a quarterback and throw them out there to fail. Draft a quarterback that can come in to learn for at least one season, then put him in the rotation. or at least put him in, the rotation to earn a position as a starting quarterback. I don't care how good your quarterback is as a rookie. I have this belief that they should always sit for one season. Always. But center is a very difficult position to learn. So I think that it is a position that you want to bring somebody in early, let them learn the position and put them in at guard. If you can find the right guy that can play both seamlessly, that would be beneficial. They're a lot harder to find, but there is a couple in this draft. And I think doing it through the draft is the key, because you're going to pay out the nose for a great center in this league, just like you will a left tackle. So the draft is where it's at, I believe, for this offensive line's future. And it's a position that we haven't spent a whole lot of time in. Colby Sorsdahl, he was a great pickup, but he's not the answer. He's depth. And when you listen to Brad Holmes in the press conference, a lot of these picks were drafted for depth. So he might, gotten crucified his rookie season. He was baptized pretty hard, but he's going to get better in his second season and his third season. And when you marry it all together, when everyone starts to click, then you get a season like we just had. But now it's building for the future and sustained success. And, you keep putting guys, in the funnel so that you keep, the team motoring forward no matter who goes down or no matter who's on the team. Peter Van Larhoven says, great positive conversations, everyone. I really enjoy this site. Well, we appreciate you, Peter. And everyone, that comments and goes through the live chat. I mean, you guys are always awesome. Sometimes I don't get heavy into the chat because you guys are just having great conversations while listening and picking up on things that I say. And then you guys talk about it with each other. It's awesome. I love it. You guys have always been excellent. I don't think I've ever had to boot anybody during a show. Demigod 313 says, the real question I want to know is if there's a game changer on defense sitting there and a top tier replacement, who do you gamble on and why? Are we talking about free agency or draft? That would be my initial question to you, is free agency or draft? Because there's plenty of guys in free agency and plenty of game changers in free agency. But I think some of them are going to get tagged. And there's a couple of names that I'll tell you right away is I think it's Christian Wilkins from Miami, defensive line, and Matabuki from the Ravens. Those were my top tier picks to bring in for defensive line. They're also, more on the expensive side. Then you've got Nadi from the Chiefs. Might not be as expensive, but all of these guys might be able to be tagged, and I'm going to have to look more into that to see who else is on the team coming up for a contract that, those teams would tag versus, those guys, because you only get one tag. You've got Daniil Hunter from the Vikings. Again, that's top tier. And Rick Critz says that's because Brandon Katz. I don't know who those people are. Ryan Van Valkenburg says, then why can't we let Hooker do the same behind Goff? So you must be talking about the sit and learn, right? And get better. That's what I'm talking about. I think that's exactly what needs to happen with Hendon Hooker. Is that he's just going to need a couple of seasons. I think some of you guys forget too that Hendon came from an offense at Tennessee that not typical offense, not really a pro style type of offense. Takes a little bit to learn. How Ben Johnson is doing his things, or to learn a pro style of offense. It's not as easy as one would think. So anyway, I guess my question is back to Demigod is, are we talking free agency or draft on, gambling on a game changer? But here's going to be my model throughout the next few weeks. I'm not looking for the top tier big names. And I think you heard Brad Holmes say that yesterday. And it's something that I've been saying for months and weeks and the last year, really, is that it's not about the big name. Yes, we'll talk about them. We'll come up with opinions. We'll have a conversation about them. We have to, right? We have to cover it. We have to talk about it because there's always that potential that it does happen. But I think when you really look at what Brad Holmes does and what he's looking to do based on what he said yesterday, it's not about the big names. It's about the fitment. It's about sustained success. And how do you get there? Well, you can't go out and pay everybody. You can't bring in all these big names and have success because you're going to run out of money. And before you know it, you got to start selling off the team because you can't retain everybody. You can go all in for one season, but typically when we see that, it's going to be, late season acquisitions before the trade deadline. And you'll go all in by grabbing one, maybe two players at the trade deadline to make that push. And that usually is because of injuries. Or you're just trying to get better. There's two reasons there. You've got injuries, you need to, kind of repurpose the team a little bit, or you're going all in and you just need a couple more guys that you feel are going to be game changers for the team. But I think that Brad is going to be frugal, yet targeted, obviously, with what he's going to do this offseason. And you're going to see, I hope, this is what we'll see, that he goes out and grabs two guys versus one guy. There's only so many roster positions, so we can't have everybody. But if he goes out and gets, two defensive ends that combined, they give you the output and production of one defensive end, you've now added a depth piece and two starters that rotate. You've also got an extra guy there. If Aiden goes down or somebody goes down, you've got options. Same thing with defensive tackle. You need some depth guys. Levi Onwuzurike not working out. We have no clue what Broderick Martin's going to do. Buggs is obviously gone. Benito Jones may not be back. So you go out and find two guys that are maybe the price of one really top, really good top tier guy. Same model. You've got a backup, so you've got depth, and you've got quality starters. Upgrade every position. Fill in the blanks to make sure that you have sustained success and depth on the team. So I think that's what you're going to see from Brad Holmes. I think that that's where he identifies what I call the roster roulette method, something that I started talking about this last year. And I'm still working on this long formula. It's crazy, this Excel spreadsheet that I've got going that identifies, when you fill in the funnel, when you draft, when you go high free agency, and how it fits within the model of the cap and how to draft. If you start with a team, fresh on day one, how do you build? Now, these guys, Brad Holmes, these teams, they've been doing this stuff for decades. Whether they call it roster roulette or not, I highly doubt it. But it's just a method and a model as to how you build a team and keep it sustained with top tier talent and cash available to get guys. Southwest Line 26 says you have to keep bringing in the talent through the draft because eventually you're going to have to pay your top players. Exactly. And Brad Holmes said that yesterday. He wants to build this team through the draft and then pay the guys that they want to keep. You draft from within your team, so to speak. You bring the guys in, you develop them, and then you pay them to keep them if you can. Can't keep them all. But that's also why you don't see teams all the time go in and draft 4 first-round picks. You won't be able to keep them all in 5 seasons. It'd be darn near impossible. Now, I've said it for years and years and years that I would much rather pick all of my guys in the top 3 rounds, but that does have cap implications too. But right now, I'm hoping that Brad Holmes makes some moves. I would kind of liquidate a little bit of 2025 and go a little bit more all in 2024. Get a couple extra picks early in this draft so that maybe we can move up. And I'm expecting him to move up. But you still want to have enough picks. I think that we're looking for 4 guys out of this draft. 4. And I think that that's what he's going to focus on. And he'll get his 4 guys, and then the rest are just kind of luxury picks. Demigod 313 says, do you think the DT Aleem McNeil is the answer, or can his job be threatened? Because he's another one that can demand money, but hasn't really been consistent. He had a pretty good season this year. Quite honestly, in the beginning of the season, he was ranked in the top 10 for DTs. I think he finished probably somewhere in the top 20. Don't quote me. I haven't looked in a couple of weeks. But here's what I would say about Aleem McNeil. For a team that doesn't have an all-star, all-pro defensive tackle, he works. For a team that does have an all-star, all-pro defensive tackle, he would really be a huge benefit to that team. I think that Aleem McNeil right now has the ability to be better than what he is. But I think it's also going to require us getting better on the other side. Everybody can be great if, and I use that loosely, let's say that you had all shut down corners and safeties, like the best of the best of the best, and they could stay sticky for 3 seconds. Your defensive ends and defensive tackles are going to win quite a lot because those guys are doing their job in the back end. So if your linebackers and your DBs are really good, the front four, front five, front three can really do much more than what they are in terms of their ability and I guess their attributes. I mean, anything you want to call it. I really believe that it's how do I put it? I really believe that one helps the other. Defensive line helps the DBs. DBs help the defensive line. So what I'm saying is this. The minute that Aleem McNeil gets somebody on the right side of that defense or next to him that can really bend the offensive line, then you're going to see him shine even more. Give me 1 second here. So that was a long answer just to say that we need some more talent on the right side of this defense, and Aleem McNeil is going to be a much better player. Sorry, brain fart there for a moment. Chris Mix says everyone is competing for their job. Aleem had a great season and will compete again next year to be even better. I think that's the answer. We need better talent. I know I said, I made a funny last year that we can't have all of these Walter Payton Man of the Year type guys on the team. At some point, we have to have some top tier talent that can actually do something on the field. Yeah, and I still believe in that. I mean, I still believe that, you want great guys, you want great football guys, great character, the culture fit, the identity, all of it. You need all of it. But we do need some top tier talent that can affect the offense and the defense in positive ways. We need a big bruiser. I mean, imagine if we had an Ndamukong Suh right now for a DT, an Ndamukong Suh in his prime for a DT with Aiden Hutchinson. I don't think that there would be an offense that could stop us. But that's what we're missing. We are missing a game changer. And we need one somewhere. Whether it's defensive tackle or defensive end, I would much rather see at the defensive tackle because you already have Aleem and his contract is going to be up. So you've got to fill in the pipeline, right? You've got to fill the funnel. So if you go after a high profile defensive tackle, whether it's in the draft or free agency, and now you've got it matched up with Aleem and you've got Aiden Hutchinson, and then you're going to add a defensive end through the draft or free agency. You're building for success, but you're also building for now. And once they get that game changer that can come in and affect the front line of this defense, I think that our defense is going to change big time in 2024. Our DBs won't have to rely, on staying sticky as long as they have to now. Chris Mick says James Houston, when healthy, should be the outside guy. His contract's up too. I hope that he comes back on a cheap deal. We'll see what happens. All right, the last topic for today. Well, I got two more topics. We'll see how much time we have. The last thing I'll say on Frank Ragnow is no matter what he does, I wish him nothing but the best, man. Health over all else. That's the key to life right now. All right, so this next topic was free agents that could possibly follow our new defensive line coach. And this was put out by the Sideline Report, Brad Behrman. And I found it, interesting. I don't agree with all of the players that he's talking about in here, but let's just take a look at some of these guys that he's talking about. Number 5 is defensive end, Teair Tart. Hopefully I pronounced his first name correctly. I doubt it. But he said Tart had a weird exit from the Titans in 2023. They waived him mid-December amid his desire for a new contract and the team's issue with his effort and attitude. Well, effort and attitude can be a direct correlation to your contract, and that's why you don't want to have those issues during a season. You set the tone with your team and you say, look, we don't do contracts during the season. It's done in the off season, period. We do not talk contract mid-season. It will derail your team. He apparently asked for and what was granted his release. He played on a $4.3 million second-round tender. So the Titans believed in him so much, they gave him a second-round tender. But if he's got effort and attitude issues and it's correlated to his contract negotiations, I guess I wouldn't lean so heavy onto his effort and attitude being a problem. Again, the tape will tell you, but I would go back and look at the year before to get a better idea of who he really is. Don't look at, this last season because there was some issues, within the front office. The Houston Texans claimed him off waivers. 2 other teams also put in a claim. So whatever those issues were that prompted the exit from Tennessee, other teams obviously were not concerned. Tart comes in as the number 71 on Pro Football Focus ranking of the top 150 2024 free agents. Here's a quote on Tart by Pro Football Focus. Says, on the field, Tart is difficult to displace with just one blocker in the run game, and he has solid juice as a pass rusher. He makes a great member of a platoon as a 0 or a 1 technique who can push the pocket or knife through double teams, and he shows good recognition as to when to get his hands up for a batted pass. All of those things are great. The batted pass thing, we need more of. We need these guys to get their hand up more. Aiden Hutchinson did it, in the NFC Championship game. Buggs was good at doing it. But we do need some more guys that are willing to get their hands up. Kaminsky used to do well with it. I don't know what happened to him this year. I think the baby really had a big effect on his season. But it goes on to say that Williams had an up-close view of Tart as his position coach. So good, bad, or maybe ugly for basically 4 seasons. He had a good eye on him. So it could be a good match. It could be a terrible match, but it's something that I'm going to look into. The one thing that I'm finding out about. Apologize. I don't know why this thing is playing here. I hate these sites. The one thing that, I'm finding out about Williams is he is so well respected and he brings a lot to this team. I am quite surprised the more and more I looked into Williams in his history that he is a Detroit Lion right now. He is somebody that is going to be up for a head coaching position. He is somebody that could be and should be a defensive coordinator in this league. So we are very lucky to have this guy a part of this team. And I think that we're going to see a huge impact that he's going to bring, not only with players and bringing in, the relationships that he has across the league, but also, just how good he is as a coach and how well respected he is by his players. I think that it's really going to amp what this team is able to do this season. Yeah, Houston, Peter is a EFA, exclusive rights free agent, but his contract's up. So we'll see what happens. The next guy, quarterback, Sean Murphy Bunting. This one, I guess I'm not really excited about this guy. Pretty much because his single coverage rate was dismal, 33.7. Pretty bad. But overall, I mean, he did have solid coverage grades. This season with no pressure was a 68.2. And when the opposing quarterback had less than 3 seconds to throw, a 63.2. And a forced incompletion rate of 8.8. Murphy Bunting was a free agent a year ago, and in a broad sense, it's possible that he was on the Lions' radar when Brad Holmes undertook the effort to remodel the secondary. He landed a 1-year prove-it deal with the Titans and started 14 games with 2 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, and 57 total tackles, and a 91.8 passer rating allowed. It's that 91.8 passer rating allowed that bothers me. That's too high. But I can't tell you that anybody else on the Lions or in the Lions DB room really did any better. So when I look at positional group and wanting to make it better, this is not the kind of guy I'm looking for. I'm looking for a stud. I'm looking for someone that can come in and lock down that number 1 spot, because it's all about competition. And we want to see these guys come in and compete with Cam Sutton and everybody else that's on this roster to take that top spot. And I have a feeling that top spot's going to be open. Cam Sutton's probably not going to like it, but I think that there's going to be some competition this season. And between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, it's probably already been communicated. That's just a guess. Debbie got 313. Yep. Nope. Says we don't need another Cam Sutton. Exactly. We need someone that is rangy. I like my guys to be 6'1" or taller, 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", no taller. 190 pounds to 205. Bigger guys. You know, guys that can thump, but they still got to have the speed. Now, it's a very rare cornerback that I just listed, but they do exist. And I'd rather have bigger guys that are rangy with some speed, but cover corners. I want to cover corner. I want someone that can play very well in man-on-man, because apparently Aaron Glenn loves to run man way too often, and it's getting our guys burned. So if he's going to continue to run man, we need better product. So I'm not sold on Bunting. This next guy, though, center and offensive guard Aaron Brewer, he's someone that I'm going to look more into. It doesn't feel like the lock it once may have been with the Lions, or that the Lions will re-sign left guard Jonah Jackson. Graham Glasgow has raised his value after an excellent season back in Detroit, and he may find the kind of money he's clear about seeking elsewhere. So there could be an issue in terms of needing either a starter at left guard or someone with versatility like Glasgow. Those are all great points. And this report, I guess, said Brad Behrman. So Brewer went from an undrafted by the Titans in 2020 to a 17-game starter. Doesn't this sound like a Brad Holmes kind of guy? And he played every offensive snap in each of the last 2 seasons. Definitely sounds like a Brad Holmes kind of guy. And he did it at 2 different positions, left guard and center. He was Pro Football Focus's number 11 center by overall grade this year. So I think that this is shaping up to be an excellent fit. He's not going to be cheap by any means, but there's 3 things that I'm seeing right here already. He's got the grit factor by starting every game. He's got the versatility by playing guard and center. The only knock on this guy, but in my opinion, there's also that third intangible. He's on the smaller side, 295. But the intangible to that is he's more athletic and quick than brutally strong, is what this article says. So Could he be a fit for the Lions? Absolutely. He could add some weight. I mean, I don't think it's hard to add weight, but when you look at Ben Johnson's run game style and the schemes that they run, we're pulling guards and, and tackles more often and sending them up in the second and third tier. This guy, with his ability to be more athletic and quick, can do that, whether he's in the guard position or the center position. I would say this, if he's going to play center, he's probably going to need to add about 10 pounds, maybe 15. But if they're going to, bring him in as a guard, I think he's going to be just fine. Now, the one thing I haven't looked at is the length of his arms. I know I'm a weirdo, but it's something that matters in this league. The length of your arms do matter. Offensive line, defensive line. It's all about getting, leverage on guys and keeping them away from you. Demigod 313 says, I'm still pissed Seahawks drafted Witherspoon. Shake my head. Let me, I'm not tooting my own horn, but let me tell you guys something. And I don't know if you guys if I've shared this a lot, but last December, not 23, but 22, I was on some different shows and we are talking about the draft. And Witherspoon at that time was ranked, I think 10th or 12th cornerback. And he was like a 4th round grade at the time or 5th round grade at the time. I thought it was crazy. Watched this tape and I said it back then. I said, this guy is going to be the top cornerback in the draft. And I said, he'll be the number 1 overall. Not overall pick, but he'll be the number 1 overall cornerback. And he was. And it's just by how I study tape that I was able to see the differences. And clearly, whoever put those rankings together, because it was across the board, that he was near the bottom, late round guy, or middle round guy. And you just got to watch the tape. You've got to look at what the guy does on tape. The stats meant nothing, but the guy had incredible stats. But then you got to marry it up to the tape. So this year, when I do my in-depth analysis of some players, I hope that I get a few more right this year. It's not very often that you can have that kind of luck where you can call a guy from the bottom to the top. But that's one I'm going to hang my hat on because I clearly did something right that day. And I'm hoping I can find a few more gems. My goal is to be an independent scout at some point. That's my goal. I want to be an independent scout, write up reports, furnish it to teams. Don't necessarily want to work for a team, but I would love to be an independent scout. Don't know how I'm going to develop it yet, but we'll see where it goes. We're starting with this and we'll see where it goes. So Brewer, I like it. I like the option. Second guy, Nick Westbrook. I think is his last name, wide receiver. Potentially losing Josh Reynolds in free agency. This could be a guy that apparently fits. He's a vertical field stretcher with good run blocking chops that could be a nice complementary piece in Detroit's offense. And with big paydays looming for Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and many others, they need to start filling out the roster with good value additions that fill a specific role. This guy is... he's a little slow. He runs a 4.68 40. In 2022, he averaged 15.9 yards per reception. He ended up on IR in 22 with a hand injury, so he had 28 catches for 370. I don't know. I'm going to have to look more into this guy. There's not enough info in this article, but I will say this. I would much rather see DPJ come back. We have Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra, Khalif Raymond is signed for this season, if not next season as well. Who else is in the wide receiver room that I know is definitely signed? I know Josh Reynolds is up. Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to look into this guy more. But we do need somebody. I'm just hoping that Jameson Williams can develop into, that 1-2 punch with Amon-Ra. And then last is defensive end Danico Autry. This is an intriguing option. Among players who have a strong tie to Williams as he prepares to leave, he's already left, is Danico Autry. His rookie year with Oakland Raiders in 2014 was Williams' last as the defensive line coach. And then Autry signed with Tennessee in 2021. In those 3 seasons back with Williams in Tennessee, Autry has posted 9, 8, and 11.5 sacks with 10, 8, and 12 tackles for loss in those respective campaigns. Those 11.5 sacks this season are his career high. Back in December, Autry said that he was open to re-signing with the Titans, but that was before they fired Mike Vrabel. And with a new head coach coming in, Williams probably started seeking other options, knowing it was not guaranteed that he would be retained. So I like Danico Autry. I think that he's a unique option, but he's turning 34. So if you're looking for somebody that's a little bit, on the older side to come in and be a leader, not really be a starter. I mean, at 34, yeah, I don't like the age. It would have to be a very cap friendly deal. And it would have to be a short deal, and it'd have to be, a mentor type position as a really good, solid backup. But I like Autry. I just don't like the age. All right. Justin Chase says, by the way, Holmes doesn't need to make excuses about Mosley. Truth is what it is. Injuries happen, could be any position in practice or game. Everyone was thinking Mosley was the better signing last year. You must just be starting the show. Oh my God. Old Jarhead says, my wife yells at me when I call Hutch T-Rex. Yeah. I didn't say it. You did. He does have short arms for his size. Demigod 313 says, yeah, a lot of our guys have been tripping over their own foot when turning their body, which makes me think it's a coaching issue. I'm not following you on this one, buddy. What are we talking about there, Demigod? Old Jarhead says Cam is too slow to play as far off as he does. That and watch the replays. He's constantly tripping. Okay, I see it now. He's constantly tripping and stumbling on his way to missing a play. I noticed that a lot too. And I don't know, was that more at home on the new turf? Because they did get a new field this year or this last year. Is it the type of shoes that he's wearing? Is he not getting clean in and out of his breaks when he's twisting his hips? I don't know if that would be a coaching issue, Demigod. I think it would be technique. So it could be coaching, but technique. But Cam's been doing this for a while now. You shouldn't be tripping up over yourself. Your technique should be sound. So I guess we'll see what changes this year. But Cam is definitely not a number one. I think we all agree on that. Lastly, cornerbacks in free agency. Let's take a look at a couple cornerbacks here. And then I'll get more in depth with it this week. This was by Tim Twentyman. He said that the Detroit defense was top 10 in the NFL on third down, with opponents converting an average of 37.1%. Detroit's secondary was also good good tackling unit all year, including the cornerbacks. I would disagree with that. There was a lot of missed tackles. So that they also allowed the second fewest 10-plus yard runs all season with only 36. Well, I would attribute that to the defensive line. Detroit 16 interceptions were 11th most in the NFL, and half of those came from the cornerback position. Branch, Jacobs, Cam Sutton, and Will Harris. I don't think we'll see Jerry Jacobs or Will Harris back. Not worried about that. So the bad, Detroit's defense struggled last month and a month and a half, limiting teams in the passing game. The final 6 games of the season, the Lions allowed an average of 411 passing yards and allowed 5 big individual receiving performances. Justin Jefferson, 141 yards and 1 TD. Wow. CeeDee Lamb, 227 yards, 1 TD. Jefferson again, 192 yards, 1 TD. Rookie Puka Nacua, 181 yards and 1 TD. And Mike Evans, 147 yards and 1 TD. Detroit allowed opponents to complete 69 passes of 20-plus yards, the most in the NFL this season. They also ranked 27th against the pass, 247.4 yards allowed, and 28 passing touchdowns, 6th most in the league. Opponents had a 94.7 passer rating on passing attempts, traveling at least 21 yards in the air. Yeah, that's terrible. It's all terrible. So when you're looking at players this year to upgrade, when you guys are doing your own independent research, make sure you look for guys that have a passer rating below 80. Those are going to be very tough to find, but we need one guy to really upgrade this team in the DB room that can be our number one. And he needs to have a passer rating below 80 so that we have better success. Now, it doesn't mean that the other guys still won't get torched. If Cam Sutton's covering the number 2 guy, I think that he has a much better season. But you still need to have somebody really lock down that number 1 wide receiver as much as you can. Giving up yards like this, 141, 227, 192, 18, I mean, that's just god awful. And to have 5 guys do it to you in one season, I'm sorry, but if that were me, I'd be firing somebody. And they already moved on from Aubrey Pleasant last year, right? He was the scapegoat for Aaron Glenn, I think. And then he goes to the Rams, and the Rams have an incredible season with their cornerback room. So something just stinks there to me. Something else is going on here. And I think that it's heavily going to, rely upon the scheme getting fixed. But we need a couple of guys. Our free agents this year is Will Harris, unrestricted, Emmanuel Mosley, unrestricted, Kendall Vildor, unrestricted, Khalil Dorsley, who is restricted, Jerry Jacobs, who's restricted, Chase Lucas, who's an exclusive rights free agent. So we've got 6 players heading into various stages of free agency this offseason. There's a good chance the makeup of the cornerback room looks much different alongside Branch and Sutton next season. So something, and that's all I'm going to speak to on his article here. But that's something that I spoke to at the beginning of the year. I was worried that we didn't have enough guys, enough long-term contracts for the DB room. And they tried to band-aid it, with these 1-year prove-it deals. We did not select but 1 guy in the draft. Quite honestly, those 5th-round picks that Brad Holmes gave up, they could have been cornerbacks. You know what? You bring them in, and you hope that they turn out to be something. But the one thing that Brad Holmes said in his press conference yesterday is the guys that said, if he was a miss, or that, they didn't want to see Barnes develop. Maybe we're wrong on Broderick Martin. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we will see a much different perspective on Broderick Martin now that a lot of the guys are going to be gone this season, and he's going to have a better chance to earn a spot as a starter. Let's hope that we are wrong, because I think that we could have added some cornerbacks, in the 3rd round that would have been much better than Broderick Martin. And the cornerback position takes a little bit of time to learn. It would have been better to have a cornerback on the team for 2 seasons or entering his 2nd season this year, getting some experience. So we'll see what happens. Last thing I want to mention is Brad Holmes throwing everybody under the bus yesterday, cashing his receipts. Thought it was hilarious. I think that Brad Holmes did it professionally. I think it was deserved that he pat himself on the back finally, because he's right about one thing. You don't draft and then grade it the next day. You're now, in your 3rd season, and now is when you grade your first draft. You've got to get through the rookie year, the sophomore year. Now you're in that 3rd year, and you're looking back because these guys are about to, either earn a 2nd contract, if they are drafted, later than the 1st round, well, they've only got 1 year left on their contract. So now is when you're evaluating. Who am I keeping? Who am I moving off of? Do I have to pay this guy next year or this year? So he's right, man. We cannot judge the draft the next day. You can put out your immediate feelings, but it takes time to really evaluate how well these guys played. So calling out Carlos Menares, It was hilarious. I think it was, I can't stand Menarez and how he's always negative. At least that's the feeling that I get from reading, his stuff is when I just won't read it anymore. Just always negative. Always seems like he's in SOL mode. But he called out Carlos. He even called out Dave. I think Dave was, Dave wanted a quarterback and we took Penei Sewell instead. I think that was the quote. And, I didn't want Penei Sewell. I wanted DT and then quarterback or cornerback. So look, Brad Holmes did it right, man. He let people know that he knows what he's doing. And that's where we're at today. Trust in the process, trust in Brad Holmes. I think that we've got an exceptional core on this team and we're going places. We've got sustained success in front of us. And hopefully we realize that first season of sustained success here in 2024 and get back. Ryan Van Valkenburg says, we need a kicker. Should have paid Prater. Yeah, Prater's a little old, but yeah, he's still playing, I believe. We do need a kicker. I would expect that the Lions draft a kicker this year. I don't know of any free agents that I would really want, but I'll have to look deeper into that. Like I said this week, we'll be diving into the free agent stuff here for a while. This draft is going to be here before you know it. And make sure you guys, sign up to get your tickets. I'll try to post some information. I signed up last year. Quite honestly, I don't even know where I signed up, but I assume that season ticket holders will be getting sent something to try to get, some access. But get your tickets if you want to go to the draft because it's going to be here very, very soon. And there are no hotels. So good luck on that too. You're going to have to stay way out of Detroit. Gary Crump, we'll talk about Jalen Johnson and the rest of the free agents here in the coming days. But to end this show today, I want to appreciate all of you guys for joining, making Rocked On Syndicate the best morning show on the network right now. We really appreciate you guys joining us each and every Tuesday and Thursday morning. Probably in the next week or two as my voice starts to come back, because you can tell it's starting to go right now. We're going to be going live more days. Derek won't be able to do it every single day, but I'll at least bring some content out to you guys in the morning. As long as we got stuff to talk about, we'll be here. So, all right, until Thursday, please go check out Rocked On Detroit Lions and Lions Fan Syndicate for the latest content. There's a lot of great stuff that's going to be popping out, and this is an exciting time of the season. We've got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. We'll figure out what we're going to do for that too. But all right, y'all, appreciate you. Go One Pride, go Detroit Lions. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.